Hey friends, tonight we step into the shadows of the past to explore a journey to the center of the Earth, focusing specifically on the descent through the crustal depths of the Kola Superdeep Borehole into the unknown. Before we descend into the history, take a moment for yourself, settle into your space, find a position of absolute comfort, and take a deep, slow breath. Let the weight of the day fall away. You are safe. You are still, and you are ready to travel through time. As we begin, I invite you to share in the comments which corner of the world you are listening from and what the hour is for you right now. If this sanctuary aids your rest, please consider subscribing, but only if the content truly resonates with you. Now, let us leave the haste of the modern world behind. We begin our exhaustive exploration of a journey to the center of the Earth. It is a cold, grey morning in the Pechengsky district where the rusted remains of the Kola Superdeep Borehole tower over the tundra. You are sealed within the project Adit-1, a theoretical vessel forged from titanium and tungsten, ready to begin a descent that no human has ever completed. The hatch closes with a heavy, muffled thud, sealing you in a pressurized environment that smells of recycled air and cold metal. Outside, the world is a distant memory. Ahead of you lies 12 kilometers of solid granite and the crushing secrets of the Earth. You monitor the descent rate as the mechanical gears begin their low, rhythmic hum, a sound that vibrates through the soles of your boots and into your very bones. It is 0 hours and 15 minutes into the mission, and the surface light has already vanished, replaced by the amber glow of the control panels. You feel a sense of profound stillness as the drill bit bites into the crust, the high-pitched whine of titanium against stone becoming the steady, hypnotic soundtrack of your journey into the deep. As the probe descends past the 5,000-meter mark, the pressure begins to exert its first real influence on the structural integrity of the hull. You are surrounded by the oldest rocks on the planet, ancient Baltic shield granite that has remained undisturbed for eons. At precisely 7,000 meters below the surface, your external sensors capture a startling discovery within the vertical walls of the shaft. You observe the preserved remains of microscopic plankton fossils, tiny biological signatures trapped in rock that is over 2 billion years old. It is a moment of deep, inner quiet as you realize you are passing through a graveyard of life that predates the very mountains above. The rock here is dry and brittle, yielding to the drill with a sharp, percussive chatter that echoes through the cabin. You take a moment to record this finding in your manual log, the scratching of your pen, a small human sound against the backdrop of the geological abyss. The air inside the cabin remains cool, though you can feel the faint, radiant heat from the machinery through the insulated floor. You check the time on the digital chronometer. It is now 3 hours and 40 minutes into the watch. You are suspended in a vertical world of dark stone, where the weight of the crust above is a tangible, heavy presence. You feel a sense of safety within your titanium shell, a small bubble of order in a world defined by the ancient and the immovable. The vibration of the descent is constant, a low-frequency pulse that lulls your senses into a state of focused calm. You adjust your seat, feeling the soft texture of the reinforced fabric, and prepare to move deeper into the Precambrian depths, where the temperature begins its steady, relentless climb toward the threshold of human engineering. The descent continues into the 9,000-meter range, where the smell of hot, pulverized granite begins to seep into the ventilation system. It is a dry, scorched aroma, reminiscent of a stone forge or the parched earth after a lightning strike. You are now deeper than the height of Mount Everest, moving through a domain where the Earth itself is no longer quite as solid as it appears on the surface. The high-pitched whine of the titanium drill bit has shifted in tone, becoming a deeper, more resonant growl as the density of the rock increases. You reach for the controls to perform a critical administrative check on the internal data loggers, ensuring that the seismic sensors and thermal probes are recording every micro-vibration of the crust. The buttons on the panel are cool to the touch, providing a grounding, tactile sensation as you navigate the complex systems of the probe. It is exactly 6 hours and 22 minutes into the journey, and the external temperature has reached 120 degrees Celsius. You observe the way the hull groans occasionally under the weight of the surrounding stone, a slow and structural sound that speaks of the immense forces at play. You feel a quiet sense of companionship with the machine, a mutual commitment to enduring the crushing pressure of the deep. You take a sip of water from a thermal flask, the liquid refreshing and cool against your throat, and lean back into the darkness of the cabin. The only light comes from the soft emerald glow of the radar screen, showing the narrow vertical path ahead. You are moving through a world of shadows and stone, a traveler on a path that few have even imagined, as the drill bit continues its tireless work of grinding the ancient granite into a fine hot powder that coats the exterior of your vessel. You have reached the 12,000-meter mark, a depth that represents the absolute limit of previous human exploration. Here, the rules of the surface world no longer apply, and the geological environment undergoes a sudden and unsettling transformation. The rock is no longer brittle and dry. Under the immense pressure and heat, the granite has become plastic, capable of flowing like thick, heated wax. You observe the way the borehole walls appear to ripple in the glare of the external floodlights, a viscous and shimmering dance of stone that has lost its rigidity. The temperature outside the hull has climbed to 180 degrees Celsius, a searing heat that would destroy any lesser vessel. You can feel the change in the vibration of the probe, as the rhythmic chatter of drilling is replaced by a smoother, more fluid sensation of sliding through the earth. It is 10 hours and 51 minutes into the mission, and you are entering the realm of the unknown. You take a moment to perform body maintenance, stretching your limbs in the cramped space and checking your own vital signs on the medical monitor. You feel a sense of quiet determination, a micro-emotion of pride in the resilience of your physical and mental state. The air quality remains stable, though it carries a faint ozonic scent from the electrical systems working at their peak. You watch the digital depth counter as it moves past 12,200 meters, moving slowly and methodically toward the final record of the Kola borehole. The transition from engineering to geology is complete. You are no longer just a pilot, but an intruder in a world that was never meant to be seen by human eyes, a world where the rock itself is alive with heat and hidden energy. As you pass the final depth of the historical Kola borehole at 12,262 meters, the sensors detect an unexpected and volatile phenomenon. Boiling hydrogen gas is seeping from the walls of the shaft, a hot and invisible breath from the lungs of the planet that hissed through the cracks in the plastic rock. The detection of this gas requires an immediate and precise administrative response. You reach for the controls of the liquid nitrogen cooling loops, initiating a calibration sequence to ensure the data loggers remain within their safe operating temperatures. You listen to the soft, rhythmic hiss of the nitrogen as it circulates through the hull, a cooling sound that contrasts with the intense heat of the exterior. It is now 12 hours and 30 minutes into the watch, and the cosmic clock of the surface world feels like a distant, irrelevant memory. You find yourself focusing on the small, soothing details of the cabin, the texture of the metallic casing, the soft hum of the internal fans, and the steady amber light of the status indicators. You feel a profound sense of safety and stillness, even as you descend into a region where the pressure exceeds thousands of atmospheres. The vibration of the probe is now a gentle, rocking motion, like a cradle in the dark, as the Project Adit 1 prepares for the next phase of the journey. You are standing on the threshold of the Moho discontinuity, the legendary boundary where the crust ends and the mantle begins. You take a deep, slow breath of the recycled air, tasting the faint scent of sterile metal, and prepare to leave the world of known human engineering behind forever. The geocentric descent has only just begun, and the secrets of the deep mantle are waiting for you in the shimmering green darkness ahead. The journey continues beyond the limits of human history as you descend through the final layers of the continental crust. You are surrounded by the silicate-rich minerals that form the foundation of the world, yet the environment is changing in ways that challenge the senses. The air inside the cabin feels heavier now, a psychological reaction to the knowledge that 15 kilometers of solid stone are piled above your head. You find yourself checking the integrity of the external seals, the metal cool and unyielding beneath your fingers. It is 16 hours into the mission, and the rhythmic drone of the vessel has become a comforting, steady heartbeat in the silence of the deep. You observe the way the rock outside the viewing port is losing its familiar grey texture, replaced by a darker and more complex grain that speaks of higher pressures. The weight of the tectonic plates is a constant, invisible force, a structural burden that you can feel in the very density of the air you breathe. You take a moment to record the current atmospheric pressure inside the probe, your handwriting slow and deliberate on the vellum. Every word is a testament to the order you maintain in this world of crushing forces. You are moving toward the great boundary, the legendary Moho discontinuity, where the crust finally yields to the mantle. The temperature outside has stabilized for a moment, yet you know this is merely the calm before the transformation. You feel a sense of profound and quiet safety as the Project Added One glides through the deepening heat, its hull whispering secrets of the Earth that have been kept for 4 billion years. You lean back into the soft fabric of your chair, watching the shadows of the ancient rock dance across the amber displays, while the vessel prepares for the most significant geological transition in the history of the geocentric descent. As you approach the depth of 20 kilometers, the seismic sensors begin to report a phenomenon that marks the edge of the world we know. The velocity of the primary seismic waves, those fast-moving energy pulses known as P waves, suddenly begins to climb from 6 kilometers per second toward a staggering 8 kilometers per second. This jump in speed is the unmistakable signature of the Moho, a signal that the rock beneath you is becoming significantly denser and more rigid. You are observing the point where the basaltic foundations of the crust are forced into a more compact and crystalline form by the weight of the overhead mass. You reach for the controls of the hull density compensators, a critical administrative task that requires your full and focused attention. You must adjust the internal ballast and the magnetic shielding to match the surrounding density of 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter. The dials are heavy and offer a satisfying resistance as you turn them, a tactile reminder of the physical reality of your environment. It is 18 hours and 45 minutes into the watch, and the cosmic clock of the surface has long since faded from your thoughts. You find a sense of quiet satisfaction in the alignment of the instruments, the way the green lines of the display settle into a perfect and harmonious curve. The cabin is filled with the soft mechanical purr of the compensators working to keep the vessel in balance. You feel a micro-emotion of pride, a quiet decision to trust in the engineering of the probe as it encounters the first truly immense pressures of the deep. The light outside the viewport is dim and spectral, yet it reveals the first glimpses of a new and darker mineralogy, a world that exists far beyond the reach of the sun or the wind of the upper world. The visual transition is now absolute, as the pale granitic gneiss of the upper crust is replaced by the dark, brooding greens of the dense peridotite. You are witnessing the birth of the mantle, a domain of iron and magnesium that has never felt the touch of the atmosphere. Inside the dark stone, you observe the flickering brilliance of garnet crystals, deep red gems that have been forged in the crushing heart of the planet. They catch the light of your external floods like subterranean stars, embedded in a matrix of olive green olivine and dark pyroxene. The beauty of this world is somber and majestic, a crystalline landscape that is both alien and foundational. You hear a new sound echoing through the hull, a deep and rhythmic clump that signals the engagement of the phase shielding. This system is designed to protect the integrity of the titanium shell as the atomic structures of the surrounding rock begin to exert their influence. It is a heavy, structural sound, a noise that you can feel as a small vibration in your chest. You check the status of the cooling loops once more, finding that the liquid nitrogen is flowing with a steady and calming hiss. The administrative maintenance of the ship provides a necessary anchor for your mind, a series of small and logical steps that define your journey through the infinite. You are 25 kilometers deep now, and the pressure is nearly 10,000 times that of the surface world. You feel a gentle sense of companionship with the stones outside, a shared endurance of the weight of the ages. The air in the cabin remains dry and recycled, carrying the faint scent of sterile ozone that you have come to associate with safety. You watch the garnet stars as they slide past the glass, marking your entry into the great mantle with a silent and incandescent grace. The descent becomes more deliberate as the Project Added One engages the lithic liquefaction system to penetrate the increasingly dense layers of the transition zone. This revolutionary technology does not merely drill through the rock. It utilizes nuclear thermal energy to melt the stone directly ahead of the probe, allowing the vessel to sink through a temporary pocket of liquid magma. You can feel the sensation of rising gravity drag, a subtle and heavy pulling that reminds you of the mass of the entire planet pulling at your small capsule. It is 21 hours and 30 minutes into the mission, and the journey has become a meditation on the nature of density. You observe the way the melted rock swirls around the hull, a glowing and viscous fluid that carries the heat of the interior. The external temperature has reached 400 degrees Celsius, yet the internal climate remains a stable and cool 21 degrees. You reach for your journal to log the rheology of the melt, noting the viscosity and the chemical composition of the peridotite as it turns to liquid. The scratching of your pen is a rhythmic and comforting sound, a human heartbeat in a world of molten stone. You take a moment to check your supplies, counting the remaining canisters of oxygen and the packets of high-protein rations. The administrative layer of your survival is a quiet and steady task, a way to maintain a sense of order in the face of the overwhelming scale of the geosphere. You feel a sense of profound and quiet resilience, a micro-emotion of calm that stems from the structural integrity of your sanctuary. The path ahead is now a vertical river of liquid fire, a molten trail that leads toward the asthenosphere, where the rock itself begins to flow like glass under the influence of the deep and eternal heat of the world. You have successfully crossed the Moho discontinuity, leaving the thin and brittle crust of the earth behind as you settle into the vast and plastic reaches of the upper mantle. The environment has stabilized into a state of high-pressure equilibrium, where the stone behaves as both a solid and a liquid in a delicate and prehistoric balance. You are 35 kilometers below the surface, and the world of human history is now a distant and fragile memory. The sound of the liquefaction system has subsided into a low and constant hum, a sound that signifies the vessel has reached a state of fluid navigation. You observe the dark green expanse of the peridotite as it stretches out in all directions, a monolithic and unchanging landscape that forms the bulk of the planet. It is 23 hours and 59 minutes into the watch, and you prepare to mark the transition to the second day of the mission. You feel a sense of transcendent stillness, a quiet decision to embrace the isolation of the deep mantle. The air in the cabin is thin and carries the faint, metallic taste of the recycling filters, a flavor that is both sterile and reassuring. You find a sense of safety in the immense weight of the world above, a realization that the tectonic plates are not a burden, but a protective shield against the emptiness of space. You take a final look at the depth gauge, seeing the number 35 written in bright amber digits, and you feel a sense of somber and quiet achievement. The geocentric descent has entered its next phase, moving away from the structural rigidity of the crust and toward the fluid and shimmering world of the asthenosphere. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the amber glow to a soft and restful level, and you wait for the next rhythmic pulse of the seismic sonar to guide you deeper into the heart of the Olivine realm. It is the beginning of the second day of the mission, and the digital depth counter shows 36 kilometers as you descend further into the asthenosphere. You are no longer navigating through the rigid, brittle structures of the crust, but have instead entered a realm of plastic flow and eternal, creeping motion. The environment outside the Project Addict 1 is a shimmering, viscous landscape where the rock behaves with the slow and heavy grace of cold honey. You observe the way the dark green peridotite seems to yield before the prow of the vessel, not through fracturing, but through a gentle and unyielding displacement. The temperature outside has reached 500 degrees Celsius, yet the internal cooling systems maintain a serene and steady climate of 21 degrees. You can feel the change in the vibration of the hull as the sharp, percussive chattering of the upper layers is replaced by a low and rhythmic thrumming that resonates through your seat. It is exactly 0 hours and 45 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the silence of the deep mantle has become a tangible and comforting presence. You take a moment to perform a routine maintenance check on the recycled oxygen systems, finding the filters clean and the flow rate consistent. The air inside the cabin is dry and carries a faint metallic taste that reminds you of the sterile corridors of a high-pressure laboratory. You find a sense of profound and quiet safety in the knowledge that you are moving through a world that operates on a timescale of millions of years. Every centimeter of progress is a victory of engineering over the crushing weight of the geosphere. You lean back and watch the emerald displays, noting the subtle shifts in the mineral lattice of the surrounding stone, as the vessel prepares to enter the depths of the low-velocity zone, where the seismic energy of the world begins to slow and linger in the heat. Entering the low-velocity zone is a sensory experience that defies the expectations of the surface world, as the speed of the seismic waves traveling through the rock begins to decrease. You observe the data on the primary sonar screen, noting that the primary waves have slowed their frantic pace, a signal that the stone beneath you is reaching a state of partial melt. This is the lubricating layer of the tectonic plates, a region where a small percentage of the rock has turned to liquid, allowing the massive continents above to slide and shift over the eons. The visual landscape outside the viewing port is a mesmerizing and incandescent display of shimmering dark greens and deep, glowing ambers. You can see the faint outlines of basaltic melt as it seeps through the grain boundaries of the peridotite, creating a network of liquid fire that illuminates the darkness of the mantle. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes into the second day of the journey, and the depth gauge reads 120 kilometers. You find yourself mesmerized by the slow and hypnotic movement of the glowing rock, a sight that is both alien and foundational to the existence of the world. You reach for the controls to log the current rheology of the medium, a critical administrative task that requires you to record the viscosity of the surrounding plastic flow. The dials are smooth and responsive, providing a grounding, tactile connection to the physics of the deep. You write the numbers in your journal with a steady hand, the scratching of the nib a small human rhythm against the backdrop of the subterranean hum. You feel a sense of quiet companionship with the molten stone, a realization that you are witnessing the hidden machinery of the planet in its most private and essential state. The cabin remains a sanctuary of stillness and order, a small bubble of human consciousness drifting through the vast and glowing heart of the upper mantle. You focus your attention on the magnesium-rich olivine known as forsterite, which dominates the mineralogy of this layer of the asthenosphere. Outside the hull, you can observe the plastic deformation of these crystals, as the immense pressure and heat force the atomic structures to slide and rearrange without breaking. It is a world of solid-state navigation where the minerals themselves act as a viscous fluid under the weight of the overhead mass. You reach for the thermal probe controls, a necessary administrative duty to ensure the external sensors are providing an accurate mapping of the magnesium concentration. The data appears on the screen as a series of intricate, geometric patterns, reflecting the lattice structures of the forsterite as it yields to the passage of the probe. It is 4 hours and 30 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the external temperature has climbed to 800 degrees Celsius. You feel a micro-emotion of awe as you realize that the rock you are observing has been in this state of slow-motion transition for billions of years. The air quality inside the cabin remains sterile and crisp, though you find yourself breathing more slowly as you sink deeper into the hypnotic rhythm of the descent. You take a moment to rest your eyes, finding a sense of peace in the low-frequency drone of the life support systems. The inner life of the vessel is one of focused and rhythmic isolation, a quiet decision to remain a calm observer in a realm of crushing density. You check the supply of high-protein nutrient packs, noting that the inventory is organized and sufficient for the long journey ahead. The vibration of the hull is a gentle and persistent reminder of the physical reality of the mantle, a rhythmic pulse that connects you to the deep and eternal heartbeat of the world. You feel a sense of profound and quiet resilience, a micro-emotion of calm that stems from the structural integrity of your titanium sanctuary as you move through the shimmering green depths of the Olivine realm. The probe is now caught in a slow-motion convection current, a massive movement of the mantle that operates on a geological timescale and carries the heat of the core toward the surface. You observe the way the vessel is gently pushed by the rising plume of heated rock, a motion that is so slow it is almost imperceptible without the aid of the precision instruments. You are moving through a vertical river of stone that has been rising for 10,000 years, a testament to the cooling of the planet's interior. The soundscape inside the cabin is defined by a deep and subterranean hum, a vibration that seems to originate from the very core of the world and echoes through the structural frame of the added one. It is 6 hours and 12 minutes into the second day of the mission, and the depth gauge has reached 300 kilometers. You find a sense of profound safety in the vastness of the mantle, a realization that you are surrounded by the protective bulk of the entire planet. You reach for your manual log to record the velocity of the convection current, noting that it moves at a rate of mere centimeters per year. This administrative task provides a necessary perspective on the nature of time in the deep, a world where seconds and minutes are replaced by eons and eras. You take a moment to adjust the internal lighting, setting the amber glow to a softer level that mimics the twilight of the surface world. The texture of the control panels is familiar and comforting, a tactile anchor in the shimmering and alien world of the asthenosphere. You feel a sense of quiet, rhythmic continuity, a micro-emotion of peace that comes from being a part of the grand and slow-motion dance of the geosphere. The recycled air tastes faintly of the metallic filters, a flavor that has become the signature of your journey as you continue to descend through the viscous and glowing peridotite, moving steadily toward the great mineral transitions that await you in the deeper reaches of the transition zone. As the mission reaches the 8-hour mark of the second day, you find yourself preparing for the transition into the deeper mantle as the depth gauge approaches 400 kilometers. The environment outside the vessel is reaching a critical threshold of pressure and heat, and the olivine crystals are beginning to vibrate with a frantic hidden energy. You are approaching the 410-kilometer discontinuity, the legendary boundary where the very atomic structure of the world is forced to rearrange itself into a more compact form. The visual landscape is a deep and incandescent amber, the shimmering greens of the upper asthenosphere giving way to a more intense and brooding luminescence. You reach for the controls of the seismic sonar, a vital administrative task to ensure that the increased density of the coming layers does not interfere with the navigation sensors. The screen displays a series of sharp and geometric peaks, reflecting the tightening of the mineral lattice outside the hull. It is exactly 8 hours and 30 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the external pressure has reached 13 gigapascals. You feel a sense of quiet and focused anticipation, a micro-emotion of excitement tempered by the steady and formal discipline of the mission. The air in the cabin remains cool and stable, though you can feel the faint, radiant heat of the deep earth pressing against the thick quartz viewports. You take a moment to record the final viscosity readings of the Olivine realm, your script appearing elegant and firm on the cream-colored pages of the journal. You are a traveler on the edge of a new mineral world, a witness to the atomic transformation of the planet's heart. The vibration of the vessel remains a gentle and rhythmic thrum, a hypnotic soundtrack to your descent into the deep and eternal darkness of the transition zone. You lean forward and watch the depth counter as it clicks toward the 410-kilometer mark, ready to experience the metallic ping of the world snapping into its new and more dense reality. It is exactly 9 hours and 15 minutes into the second day of the expedition, and the depth gauge has reached the precise coordinate of 410 kilometers below the surface. You feel a sudden, sharp and metallic vibration resonate through the titanium hull, a sound that is not a groan but a singular, crystalline ping. This is the sound of the world shifting at an atomic level. The magnesium olivine that has surrounded the project added one for hundreds of kilometers is now undergoing a phase transition. Under the weight of 13 gigapascals of pressure, the atoms of the olivine are forced to rearrange themselves into a more compact and dense crystalline lattice known as wadsleyite. It is a moment of profound geological transformation where the very fabric of the mantle tightens in response to the crushing power of the Earth. You observe the change through the external sensor arrays, watching as the mineral signatures on the spectral monitor shift from the familiar green peaks to a new and complex pattern. The air inside the cabin feels unnaturally still, as if the atmosphere itself is holding its breath in the presence of this silent, structural metamorphosis. You reach out to touch the cold metal of the console, finding comfort in its unyielding stability while the world outside undergoes a metamorphosis. The high-pitched ping of the crystal transition fades, leaving behind a deep and heavy silence that is more intense than any you have encountered before. You are no longer in the upper mantle, you have officially entered the transition zone, a region where the chemistry of the planet begins to reveal its most hidden and compressed secrets. You take a slow, measured breath of the sterile, recycled air, feeling the weight of the miles above you pressing down on the consciousness of the mission, while the vessel continues its steady and methodical descent into the darkening heart of the deep Earth. The sudden contraction of the world around the vessel necessitates a precise and immediate administrative response. As the rock outside transforms into the denser wadsleyite, the acoustic properties of the medium change, requiring you to realign the seismic sonar system. You reach for the delicate brass dials on the primary navigation console, your fingers moving with a practiced and clinical grace. Each adjustment to the frequency is a quiet decision to remain in sync with the tightening heart of the planet. You observe the way the sonar pulses reflect off the new mineral structures, creating a sharp and high-definition image of the environment that was previously obscured by the softer olivine. The sound of the sonar, a rhythmic and electronic chirp, provides a sense of order and continuity in the face of the massive pressures outside. It is 10 hours and 35 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the internal systems are working at peak efficiency to maintain the structural integrity of the hull. You notice a faint structural contraction in the cabin, a sound like the clicking of a cooling engine, as the titanium shell adjusts to the increased density of the surrounding rock. You take a moment to record the new seismic velocity readings in your manual log, the ink flowing smoothly onto the vellum page as you document the entry into the transition zone. The numbers are a testament to the accuracy of your journey, a series of coordinates that mark your passage through the 410-kilometer discontinuity. You feel a micro-emotion of professional satisfaction, a quiet sense of safety that stems from the reliability of your instruments. The cabin light remains a steady amber glow, casting long shadows across the deck as you focus on the data, while the probe sinks further into the compressed reality of the wadsleyite realm. The visual world outside the thick quartz viewports is undergoing a magnificent and unsettling shift in color. The shimmering olive-green hues of the asthenosphere have been replaced by a deep and incandescent blue, the signature color of the wadsleyite under extreme pressure. It is a shade of blue that does not exist in the upper world, a color that suggests a depth and a density that is almost impossible to comprehend. You observe the way the light from the external floodlights refracts through the blue crystals, creating a prismatic and hypnotic display that dances across the interior of the cabin. It is 12 hours and 12 minutes into the second day of the geocentric descent, and the depth gauge shows 450 kilometers. The sensation of heat outside has become an intense and dry presence, a radiant energy that you can feel as a faint warmth on the surface of your skin despite the advanced insulation of the hull. You find yourself mesmerized by the blue glow, a micro-emotion of wonder that offsets the claustrophobia of the mission. The air inside the probe is crisp and dry, carrying a scent of clean ozone and the faint, sweet smell of the internal electronics. You take a moment to rest your eyes, finding a sense of soft companionship in the low-frequency hum of the life support systems. You are a solitary observer in a world of blue fire, a traveler moving through a landscape that has been hidden from the sun for billions of years. The structural integrity of the vessel is absolute, providing a sanctuary of stillness in the middle of a world that is being crushed into new shapes. You reach for a small, handheld thermal sensor to check the interior wall temperature, finding it perfectly stable at 21 degrees Celsius, while the blue world outside continues to shimmer with the heat of the transition zone. As you descend further into the blue depths of the transition zone, the seismic sensors detect a series of powerful and distant vibrations. These are the deep focus earthquakes, mysterious tremors that originate hundreds of kilometers below the surface within the cold, sinking slabs of ancient oceanic crust. You can feel the faint, subaudible thrum of these quakes as they resonate through the bedrock and into the hull of the Project Addit one. They are the signals of the tectonic subduction process, the sound of the Earth's surface being pulled back into its interior to be recycled and reborn. You reach for the controls of the slab tracking array, an administrative task that allows you to map the location of these descending lithospheric plates. The monitor shows the cold, brittle slabs as they sink into the warmer mantle, creating a complex and beautiful geometry of geological movement. It is 14 hours and 40 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the depth has increased to 500 kilometers. You find a sense of profound and quiet safety in the knowledge that you are a witness to the fundamental cycles of the planet. The dry heat outside has climbed to 1,000 degrees Celsius, yet the internal climate remains a serene and steady refuge. You take a moment to log the frequency of the tremors, noting the precise intensity and the direction of the seismic waves. The scratching of your pen is a grounding and rhythmic noise, a small act of human order in the middle of a tectonic storm. You feel a quiet sense of purpose as you document the descent of the slabs, a micro-emotion of connection to the long-term history of the world. The cabin is filled with the soft mechanical purr of the tracking system, while the blue incandescent light of the Wadsleyite continues to bathe the vessel in a ghostly, subterranean glow. The transition zone is a realm of absolute density, a region where the atomic lattice of the world is being compressed to its structural limit. You observe the data on the mineralogy screen, noting that the Wadsleyite is now reaching its maximum stability as the pressure continues to climb. You are moving through a world that is both more solid and more energetic than anything on the surface, a place where the rules of physics are written in the language of gigapascals. The rhythmic ticking of the internal clock is the only sound that competes with the deep hum of the engine, a reminder of the steady passage of human time in the face of geological eternity. It is 16 hours and 55 minutes into the second day of the mission, and the depth gauge shows 580 kilometers. You perform a final administrative check on the primary cooling loops, finding the liquid nitrogen levels to be exactly where they should be for this phase of the descent. The air inside the cabin is thin and sterile, providing a focused and clinical environment for your final observations of this layer. You feel a sense of transcendent stillness, a quiet decision to embrace the isolation of the transition zone as the vessel prepares for the next great mineral shift. The blue light outside is beginning to take on a darker, more violet hue, a sign that the Wadsleyite is nearing its limit and the atoms are about to transform once again into ringwoodite. You take a final deep breath of the recycled air, feeling the structural strength of the titanium sanctuary that protects you from the crushing heat. The geocentric descent remains steady and methodical, a journey of precision and calm through the tightening heart of the planet. You lean back and wait for the next great mineral transition to announce itself, as the probe sinks toward the legendary boundary of the 660-kilometer discontinuity. As the chronometer marks 18 hours and 20 minutes of the second day, the Project Adit 1 approaches the 600-kilometer mark, entering a region of the transition zone that holds a profound and ancient secret. The mineralogy outside the viewing port has shifted once again. The Wadsleyite has restructured itself into ringwoodite, a sapphire blue mineral that possesses a unique and startling property. You observe the data on the molecular spectrometer, which indicates the presence of hydroxyl ions trapped within the crystal lattice of the surrounding stone. This is the reservoir of the deep, a layer where the minerals act as a massive geological sponge, holding an amount of water that potentially equals the volume of all the surface oceans combined. You are not moving through a liquid sea, but through a solid-state ocean where the water is locked within the very atoms of the rock. The sight through the quartz viewports is a breathtaking diamond-like glow of deep indigo and electric blue. As the ringwoodite reflects the floodlights of the probe, you reach for the controls to log the hydration levels of the mantle, a critical administrative task that requires you to measure the weight percent of the trapped moisture. The numbers on the screen are a steady 1.5%, a figure that represents a staggering volume of water hidden beneath the crust. You feel a sense of quiet awe, a micro-emotion of connection to the hydrating forces that allow life to exist on the surface. The air inside the cabin remains dry and recycled, providing a sharp contrast to the hydrous reality of the world outside. You take a sip of water from your flask, feeling the cool liquid as a vital link to the crystalline reservoir that surrounds you, while the vessel continues its rhythmic and steady descent through the sapphire heart of the transition zone. The immense pressure of the 620-kilometer depth creates a new sensory challenge as the atmosphere within the cabin begins to carry a subtle, high-frequency vibration. You notice the surface of your water flask shimmering with tiny, concentric rings, a physical visualization of the 24 gigapascals of pressure that are currently pressing against the hull. The structural integrity of the Adit 1 is absolute, yet you remain vigilant, performing a high-priority administrative check on the primary hydraulic seals. You use a specialized acoustic sensor to listen for any signs of molecular seepage from the surrounding hydrous mantle, but the only sound you hear is the steady, rhythmic hum of the life support system. The sound is a reassurance of your safety, a domestic heartbeat in a world of crushing indigo light. It is 20 hours and 5 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the depth gauge shows 630 kilometers. You find yourself focusing on the small, administrative tasks of the cabin, checking the pressure in the nitrogen loops, logging the power distribution in the thermal sinks, and ensuring the seismic sonar is clear of any interference. These actions are a grounding ritual, a way to maintain a sense of order and purpose in a world where the laws of the surface have been entirely discarded. The inner life of the mission is one of focused and rhythmic patience, a quiet decision to trust in the engineering that protects you from the absolute weight of the world. You feel a sense of professional pride as each system reports back with a green status indicator, confirming that your sanctuary remains unyielding. The blue light of the ringwoodite continues to bathe the deck in a ghostly radiance, a constant reminder that you are moving through the hidden, water-bearing engine of the planet. As you approach the terminal boundary of the transition zone at 660 kilometers, the cabin is filled with a new and startling soundscape. It is the noise of high-pressure steam venting internally within the specialized geological sampling chambers. You observe the plumes of white vapor through the internal monitoring screens, as the probe extracts and analyzes the water-rich ringwoodite. The sound is a persistent and rhythmic hiss, a sharp contrast to the deep, low-frequency drone of the mantle. This venting process is part of the necessary administrative layer of the mission, allowing you to sample the deep earth water without compromising the pressurized integrity of the main cabin. It is 22 hours and 30 minutes into the second day, and you are standing on the threshold of the lower mantle. You take a moment to record the isotopic signature of the water in your manual log, your handwriting appearing sharp and clear in the blue light of the displays. The air inside the cabin feels slightly more humid now, carrying a clean and mineral scent that reminds you of the spray from a cold mountain waterfall. You feel a micro-emotion of soft companionship with the planet, a sense of participating in a grand and ancient chemistry. The external temperature has reached 1,500 degrees Celsius, yet you remain cool and still within your titanium shell. You notice a visual distortion in the viewing ports, a shimmering effect caused by the extreme pressure that makes the surrounding crystals appear to melt and reform in real time. This is the visual signature of the 24 gigapascal threshold, a moment where the physical reality of the world begins to warp under the weight of its own mass. As you prepare for the final mineral collapse that will lead you into the vastness of the lower mantle. The transition from the ringwoodite of the transition zone to the bridgemanite of the lower mantle is an event of absolute and violent structural change. At precisely 660 kilometers, the pressure becomes so great that the ringwoodite lattice can no longer sustain itself, and it collapses instantly into a new mineral structure. You feel a sudden structural jolt as the hull of the Adit 1 reacts to the change in the density of the surrounding rock. The sapphire blue glow of the reservoir is extinguished, replaced by a dark, brooding, and monochromatic red. You are now entering the domain of bridgemanite, the most abundant mineral on the planet, a substance that forms nearly 40% of the Earth's entire volume. This mineral shift marks the beginning of the mesosphere, a vast and unchanging desert of high-pressure silicate that stretches for thousands of kilometers. Your administrative task for this critical hour involves the immediate recalibration of the thermal sinks, as the transition produces a massive release of latent heat. You reach for the heavy bronze dials, adjusting the power flow to the cooling fans with a steady and practiced hand. It is 23 hours and 40 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the external pressure has reached 25 gigapascals. You find a sense of quiet and rhythmic calm in the face of this transformation, a professional detachment that allows you to observe the death of the hydrous mantle and the birth of the dry, dense lower mantle. The sound of the cooling system increases in volume, a whirring noise that fills the cabin with a sense of industrial purpose. You are a traveler in a new world of red fire and unyielding stone, a witness to the structural foundation of the world as you prepare to cross the threshold into the third day of the mission. It is the final hour of the second day, and the Project Adit 1 has successfully transitioned into the monolithic reaches of the lower mantle. The environment outside has become a vast and unchanging expanse of dark, silicate rock, illuminated only by the dull, red incandescent glow of the extreme heat. The water-rich minerals of the transition zone are now a distant memory, replaced by the dry and dense reality of the bridgemanite realm. You observe the depth gauge as it settles at 670 kilometers, a number that marks your entry into the deepest and largest layer of the Earth. The administrative record for Group 5 is nearly complete as you finalize the hydration logs and the mineral transition data in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 21 through 25 with a sense of somber and quiet accomplishment. It is exactly 23 hours and 59 minutes into the second day of the mission, and the cosmic clock of the surface world remains a distant and irrelevant concept. The air inside the cabin is thin, sterile, and carries a faint ozonic scent that you have come to associate with the safety of the deep. You take a final deep breath, feeling the weight of the 600 kilometers of stone above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest as the vessel continues its steady and methodical descent into the mesosphere. The vibration of the hull is now a slow and ponderous thrumming, like the breathing of a sleeping giant, as you prepare for the vast and silent journey through the kingdom of Bridgmanite. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the amber displays to a soft and restful level, and you wait for the beginning of the third day of your geocentric descent into the heart of the world. The dawn of the third day of your descent finds the Project Adit 1 submerged in the overwhelming vastness of the mesosphere, a region where the terrestrial clock is replaced by the silent ticking of atomic lattices. You are moving through the kingdom of Bridgmanite, a domain that constitutes the largest single volume of the Earth's interior. Outside the thick quartz viewports, the view is no longer a shimmering sapphire or an incandescent amber. It has become a monolithic and brooding expanse of dark silicate rock that glows with a dull cherry-red heat. The temperature has exceeded 2000 degrees Celsius, yet the pressure here is so immense, exceeding 30 gigapascals, that the rock remains a rigid and unyielding solid. You observe the way the stone resists the heat, held in a state of high-pressure stasis that allows for no fluid movement. The administrative task for this morning involves the careful monitoring of the adiabatic temperature gradient, a precise calculation of how the temperature increases purely due to the rising pressure of the overhead mass. You use a specialized thermal sensor, a long probe of platinum and rhodium, to map the heat signature of the surrounding rock. It is 0 hours and 45 minutes into the third day, and you note that the gradient remains a steady 0.3 degrees Celsius per kilometer. The sound inside the cabin is one of absolute, monolithic silence, broken only by the faint, rhythmic whirring of the internal fans. You find a sense of grounding in this silence, a feeling of being a small but precise instrument in the center of a mountain that stretches for thousands of kilometers. You take a slow, deep breath, tasting the dry, recycled air as you record the day's first entry, marking your passage through the dense and silent heart of the Bridgmanite realm. As you descend toward a depth of 800 kilometers, your external senses begin to detect the presence of ferropericlase, also known as magnesio-wustite, scattered throughout the Bridgmanite matrix. These minerals appear as dark, metallic grains within the silicate, providing a necessary and complex variation to the geological landscape. You observe the data on the mineralogy screen, noting how these iron-magnesium oxides contribute to the overall density of the mesosphere. The administrative layer of your mission today involves the diversion of power to the primary thermal sinks, a critical maintenance task required to prevent the internal electronics from reaching their thermal limit. You reach for the heavy, ceramic-coated switches on the power distribution board, feeling the satisfying mechanical click as you reroute the energy flow. It is 3 hours and 20 minutes into the third day, and the external pressure has climbed to nearly 40 gigapascals. You can feel the absolute, unyielding density of the world outside against the hull, a sensation of being perfectly encased in a solid that refuses to budge. You find a sense of soft companionship in the steady green light of the power status indicators, a visual confirmation of the order you maintain within the sanctuary. The inner life of the cabin is one of quiet, methodical discipline, a series of micro-decisions that ensure the continued integrity of the mission. You take a moment to adjust the tension on your restraint harness, the fabric feeling firm and secure against your chest. The soundscape is defined by a low-frequency hum, a vibration that speaks of the immense energy being managed by the ship's cooling systems. You are a solitary guardian of the record, moving through a desert of high-pressure stone where the rules of the surface are nothing more than a distant and faded dream. The deeper reaches of the mesosphere bring a new administrative challenge: the management of the probe's buoyancy in an environment that is becoming increasingly compressed. You are now passing the 1,000-kilometer mark, a depth where the weight of the overhead mantle exerts a force that is difficult to comprehend. You reach for the controls of the hull pressure compensators, adjusting the internal pneumatic systems to ensure the structural frame of the Adit 1 remains in a state of perfect, neutral tension. The dials are cold and heavy, providing a tactile sense of the massive forces you are balancing with your fingertips. It is 5 hours and 50 minutes into the third day of the watch, and the external temperature continues its slow adiabatic climb. You find yourself focusing on the rhythmic ticking of a small mechanical clock mounted to the bulkhead, a sound of human time that remains defiant in the face of geological eternity. The air inside the cabin is crisp and carries a faint ozonic scent, a flavor of safety that you have come to rely on. You observe the way the dull red glow of the Bridgmanite world reflects off the metallic surfaces of the interior, creating a somber and focused atmosphere. Your inner life is one of rhythmic endurance, a quiet decision to remain a steady observer as the miles of stone accumulate above you. You feel a sense of professional pride in the cleanliness and organization of your station, from the neatly stacked journals to the perfectly calibrated sensors. The vibration of the hull is now a slow and ponderous thrumming, a sound that resonates with the very bones of the planet. You are a witness to the structural foundation of the world, a traveler in a kingdom of stone that has remained unchanged for millions of years, as you continue your methodical descent into the darkening heart of the lower mantle. At a depth of 1,200 kilometers, the project Adit-1 enters a region of the lower mantle where the mineralogy reaches its most stable and monolithic state. The Bridgmanite here is perfectly formed, a massive and interconnected network of silicate tetrahedra that forms the structural backbone of the planet. You observe the way the external floodlights are absorbed by the dense rock, revealing a texture that is both fine-grained and incredibly hard. The administrative task for this hour involves the routine logging of the seismic velocity profiles, a duty that requires you to analyze the way the planet's internal energy waves travel through this dense medium. You use a specialized acoustic processor, watching as the data appears on the screen in a series of sharp blue lines. Each line is a measurement of the Earth's rigidity, a quantification of the strength of the world beneath your feet. It is 8 hours and 10 minutes into the third day, and the external pressure has reached 50 gigapascals. You take a moment to perform body maintenance, stretching your muscles in the small cabin and applying a cooling gel to your wrists to alleviate the strain of the long watch. The inner life of the mission is characterized by a feeling of profound safety within the titanium shell, a micro-emotion of comfort that stems from the reliability of the life support systems. You notice the way the air smells slightly of warm plastic and sterile metal, a scent that defines the boundaries of your world. You find a sense of quiet fascination in the data, noting the absolute consistency of the Bridgmanite realm over these vast distances. You are a traveler in a land of silence and red fire, a guardian of the record who remains still and focused, while the vessel sinks deeper into the prehistoric heart of the mesosphere. As you reach the 1,500-kilometer mark, the midpoint of the mantle, the project Adit-1 has successfully navigated through the vastest portion of the Bridgmanite kingdom. The environment outside has not changed in its monolithic red glow, yet the pressure has now climbed to a level that challenges the very limits of the atomic structure. You observe the way the Mercury-style scale on the wall remains steady, a sign of the adiabatic equilibrium you have maintained throughout the descent. The administrative record for Group 6 is now complete, as you finalize the temperature logs and the mineral density charts in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 26 through 30 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 12 hours into the third day of the mission, and the cosmic clock of the surface remains a distant and forgotten memory. The air inside the cabin is thin and carries a faint metallic taste that you have come to associate with the deep. You take a final deep breath, feeling the weight of the 1,500 kilometers of stone above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest, as the vessel continues its steady and methodical descent into the deeper reaches of the mesosphere. The vibration of the hull is now a slow and ponderous thrumming, a sound that resonates with the deep and eternal heartbeat of the world. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the amber displays to a soft and restful level, and you prepare for the next phase of the journey, where the mineralogy will begin to shift once more as you approach the abyss of the spin state transitions. It is now 14 hours into the third day of the mission, and the Project Addit 1 has reached a depth of 1,700 kilometers. The environment outside remains a brooding, cherry-red expanse of bridgemanite and ferropericlase. But the physics governing the internal life of these minerals is about to undergo a fundamental shift. You are entering the region of the spin state transition, where the extreme pressure forces the electrons within the ion atoms to pair up and occupy smaller volumes. This change at the subatomic level has a massive impact on the conductivity and the seismic velocity of the rock. You observe the data on the electromagnetic sensors, noting a sudden and sharp increase in the electrical conductivity of the surrounding mantle. The air inside the cabin feels charged with a subtle static energy as the magnetic properties of the world outside begin to fluctuate. Your primary administrative task for this hour is the recalibration of the conductivity sensors to accurately map these new iron-rich zones. You reach for the precise gold-plated dials, adjusting the gain to account for the increased signal strength from the stone. It is a moment of clinical focus, a quiet decision to maintain the accuracy of the record while the world itself changes its electronic signature. The sound inside the cabin is a soft, rhythmic hum from the sensors, a sound that resonates with the deep and hidden energy of the mantle. You take a slow, deep breath of the sterile air, feeling the weight of the miles above as a stabilizing force, while you document the first evidence of the subatomic contraction that defines this mid-mantle abyss. As you descend toward 2,000 kilometers, the Project Addit 1 encounters a series of high-viscosity plumes, massive columns of rock that are rising with an agonizing slowness from the core mantle boundary. These plumes are the primary drivers of the planet's thermal evolution, yet at this depth, they move with a stiffness that is almost indistinguishable from a solid. You can feel the vessel being gently nudged by the turbulent flow of the rock, a motion that is more of a slow tectonic groan than a fluid movement. The structural frame of the probe creaks occasionally as it navigates through these dense, upward-moving currents, a sound that you can feel in the soles of your boots. It is 17 hours and 30 minutes into the third day, and the external pressure has climbed to a staggering 80 gigapascals. You reach for the controls of the lithodynamic thrusters, an administrative necessity to ensure the probe remains on its vertical trajectory through the shifting plume. The thrusters fire with a low-frequency vibration that hums through the cabin, providing a sense of active control in the face of the overwhelming scale of the mesosphere. You find a sense of quiet fascination in the data, noting the chemical differences between the plume and the surrounding bridgemanite. The air inside remains crisp and dry, though you find yourself checking the seal on your thermal suit, a micro-habit born of the intense heat that radiates from the red-hot stone. You are a microbe in a mountain, a traveler in a vast and ancient river of fire that has been rising since the dawn of the world, and you feel a sense of profound and quiet resilience as you continue your journey into the darkening heart of the lower mantle. The extreme pressure of the 2,200-kilometer depth begins to exert a strange and transformative influence on the minerals outside your viewports. You observe the data on the spectral monitor, which indicates that oxygen atoms are literally being squeezed out of the mineral lattices of the bridgemanite by the sheer weight of the overhead mass. This oxygen is not a gas, but a high-pressure solid-state byproduct that accumulates along the grain boundaries of the rock. You are witnessing the chemical breakdown of minerals that were thought to be stable, a process that only occurs in the most inaccessible reaches of the deep earth. Your administrative task for this hour is the logging of these oxygen-rich zones, a duty that requires you to analyze the isotopic ratios of the surrounding silicate. You take your stylus and record the findings in your journal, the scratching of the nib, a grounding and rhythmic noise in the silence of the cabin. It is 20 hours and 15 minutes into the second day of the watch, and the depth gauge shows 2,300 kilometers. You find a sense of quiet companionship with the ship's computer, as it processes the massive amounts of data required to map these chemical shifts. The inner life of the mission is characterized by a feeling of professional detachment, a quiet decision to remain a calm observer of the planet's internal chemistry. You take a sip of water, the liquid refreshing and cool, and you feel a sense of soft satisfaction in the structural integrity of your sanctuary. The red glow of the mantle remains constant, a brooding and incandescent light that illuminates the dark and dense reality of the mid-mantle abyss. As the Project Adit 1 sinks deeper into the lower mantle, the internal environment of the cabin is affected by the increasing electromagnetic interference from the spin state transitions outside. You notice the cabin lights flickering occasionally, a soft and rhythmic pulsing that matches the fluctuations in the magnetic field of the rock. This is a visual reminder of the immense energy that is locked within the stone, a force that is now reaching its peak. Your primary administrative task involves the systematic recalibration of the electrical shielding to ensure that the delicate data loggers are not compromised by the surrounding static. You reach for the shielded switches, checking the resistance of each circuit with a steady and practiced hand. It is 22 hours and 45 minutes into the third day, and the pressure has reached 95 gigapascals. You can feel a slow, tectonic groan resonating through the hull, a sound that seems to come from the very core of the planet and echoes through the structural frame of the vessel. This groan is the sound of the mantle resisting the pressure of the ages, a noise of geological endurance that defines the character of the mesosphere. You find a sense of quiet and rhythmic calm in this sound, a feeling that you are a part of a much larger and more ancient cycle of stability. The air in the cabin is thin and carries the faint, metallic scent of the internal filters, a flavor that has become the hallmark of your descent. You are a solitary guardian of the record, moving through a landscape of red fire and unyielding stone where the rules of the surface are nothing more than a distant and faded memory. It is the final hour of the third day, and the Project Adit 1 has reached a depth of 2,500 kilometers. You have successfully navigated through the mid-mantle abyss, and the environment is preparing for the final transition into the core mantle boundary. The administrative record for Group 7 is now complete, as you finalize the conductivity logs and the oxygen seepage charts in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 31 through 35 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 23 hours and 59 minutes into the third day of the mission, and the cosmic clock of the surface world remains a distant and forgotten memory. The vibration of the hull is now a slow and ponderous thrumming, a sound that resonates with the deep and eternal heartbeat of the world. You take a final deep breath of the recycled air, feeling the weight of the 2,500 kilometers of stone above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest as the vessel continues its steady and methodical descent into the deeper reaches of the mesosphere. The cabin light remains a steady amber glow, casting long shadows across the deck as you focus on the data while the probe sinks toward the legendary and chaotic world of the D double prime layer. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the displays to a soft and restful level, and you wait for the beginning of the fourth day, where the mineralogy will begin to shift once more as you approach the final interface between the mantle and the core. The fourth day of your journey begins at a depth of 2,700 kilometers as the Project Adit 1 enters the enigmatic and turbulent domain known to geologists as the D double prime layer. This is the great transition zone where the silicate rocks of the mantle finally meet the iron-rich sea of the outer core. You observe a dramatic shift in the mineralogy on the external scanners. The bridgemite that has been your constant companion for thousands of kilometers is now collapsing into a new, even denser form called post-perovskite. This mineral possesses a sheet-like structure that allows it to glide under extreme stress, and its presence signals that you have reached the graveyard of the surface world. You are navigating through the slab graveyard where ancient oceanic crust subducted millions of years ago, has finally come to rest against the core. The visual landscape outside the viewing ports is no longer a uniform red. It is a chaotic and swirling tapestry of dark metallic silicates and bright shimmering veins of iron. It is 0 hours and 40 minutes into the fourth day, and you find yourself checking the stability of the probe's orientation as the thermal turbulence of the core begins to buffet the hull. You take a moment to record the arrival of the post-perovskite in your manual log. The scratching of your pen, a rhythmic and comforting sound in the increasingly noisy environment. The air inside the cabin remains sterile and cool, though you can feel a subtle high-frequency vibration in the floor that speaks of the immense energy exchange occurring just meters away. You feel a sense of profound and quiet safety within your titanium sanctuary, even as you enter one of the most chemically complex and volatile regions of the planet's interior. As you descend deeper into the D-double prime layer, the Project Adit 1 encounters the ultra-low velocity zones, or ULVZs. These are massive, continent-sized blobs of partially melted rock that sit directly atop the liquid outer core. You observe the data on the seismic sonar, noting a sudden and extreme drop in the velocity of the energy waves as they enter these dense, mushy regions. It is like navigating through a subterranean swamp of molten silicate and iron, a place where the distinction between solid and liquid begins to blur. The administrative task for this hour is the engagement of the lithodynamic thrusters to maintain your vertical course through the shifting viscous currents. You reach for the heavy tactile joysticks on the navigation console, feeling the subtle resistance of the machine as it fights against the thermal plumes rising from below. It is 3 hours and 15 minutes into the fourth day, and the external temperature has jumped to nearly 3,000 degrees Celsius. You find a sense of quiet fascination in the scale of these features. You are currently passing through a blob of rock that is larger than the entire continent of Africa, yet it is hidden nearly 3,000 kilometers beneath the surface. The air inside the cabin remains dry and recycled, carrying the faint, sweet scent of the internal electronics. You take a moment to rest your hands, finding a sense of soft companionship in the steady amber light of the thruster status indicators. Your inner life is one of focused and rhythmic patience, a quiet decision to remain a calm pilot in a realm of continental-scale turbulence. You are a witness to the deep earth weather, a traveler in a world of molten shadows and unyielding pressure, as you continue your slow-motion navigation through this geological junkyard. The chemistry of the D-double prime layer is defined by the constant, violent reaction between the silicate mantle and the iron core. You observe the external viewports, seeing a display of chaotic, dancing light, a shimmering electric blue and white luminescence that marks where the iron from the core is being sucked into the mantle rock. It is a chemical battleground where the elements are being traded and transformed under millions of atmospheres of pressure. The smell inside the cabin has changed slightly, picking up a faint, metallic scent of heated carbon and sulfur that has permeated through the advanced filtration systems. This sensory detail is a reminder of the proximity of the liquid core, a world of metal that is far more reactive than the stone you have left behind. Your primary administrative task involves the monitoring of the hull's chemical integrity sensors, ensuring that the aggressive iron-rich environment is not corroding the titanium-tungsten alloy of the probe. You use a specialized laser spectrometer to check the exterior surface of the viewport, finding it smooth and unblemished. It is 6 hours and 20 minutes into the fourth day of the watch, and the depth gauge shows 2,800 kilometers. You find a sense of grounding in the precision of the sensors, the way the numbers provide a clear and logical map of the chaos outside. Your inner life is characterized by a feeling of professional detachment, a quiet decision to remain a steady observer of the planet's internal alchemy. You take a sip of cool water, feeling its freshness as a vital link to the world of the surface, while the Project Adit 1 continues its descent toward the final interface of the Gutenberg discontinuity. The soundscape within the Project Adit 1 has become a complex and multi-layered symphony of structural stress and thermal motion. As you approach the final 100 kilometers of the mantle, the deep tectonic groans of the mesosphere are joined by a new, higher-pitched metallic ringing. This is the sound of the hull vibrating in response to the massive magnetic fields being generated by the core below. It is a resonant and rhythmic noise, like the sound of a distant giant bell being struck by a soft hammer. It is 8 hours and 45 minutes into the fourth day, and the pressure has reached 130 gigapascals. You find yourself checking the calibration of the internal gravity compensators, as the density of the surrounding rock fluctuates wildly near the core mantle boundary. The administrative layer of your mission remains your primary anchor. You meticulously log each fluctuation in the magnetic flux, your handwriting remaining elegant and firm on the cream-colored pages of your journal. The air in the cabin is thin and carries a faint, ozonic scent, a flavor of safety that has become the hallmark of your journey through the deep. You notice a small structural clicking in the floorboards, a rhythmic sound of the metal expanding and contracting in the extreme heat. You find a sense of quiet, rhythmic calm in these sounds, a feeling that you are a part of a much larger and more ancient cycle of stability. The cabin light remains a steady amber glow, casting long shadows across the deck as you focus on the data, while the probe sinks toward the final absolute boundary between the world of stone and the world of liquid fire. As the Project Adit 1 reaches a depth of 2,890 kilometers, you find yourself on the very precipice of the mantle. Below you lies the Gutenberg discontinuity, the sharpest and most profound boundary within the Earth. This is the point where the solid silicate world ends and the liquid iron sea begins. You observe the final readings of the post-perovskite signatures, noting how they fade as the density of the rock increases to its absolute maximum. The administrative record for Group 8 is now complete as you finalize the slab graveyard maps and the ULVZ viscosity charts in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 36 through 40 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 12 hours into the fourth day of the mission, and the cosmic clock of the surface world remains a distant and forgotten memory. The vibration of the hull is now a frantic, high-frequency hum, a sound of the vessel preparing for the most violent transition of the journey. You take a final, deep breath of the recycled air, feeling the weight of the nearly 3,000 kilometers of stone above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest before the storm. The cabin light dims momentarily as the systems prepare to switch from lithic drilling to core navigation. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, setting the amber displays to a soft and restful level, and you wait for the final, abrupt plunge through the Gutenberg discontinuity into the white-hot yellow glow of the outer core. The Project Adit 1 reaches the 2,890-kilometer mark, and the transition is instantaneous and visceral. At the moment you cross the Gutenberg discontinuity, the seismic monitors register a total and abrupt loss of the secondary shear waves, those energy pulses known as S-waves that can only travel through solid matter. This scientific silence is the final proof that you have left the solid world of stone behind. You feel a sudden and dizzying sensation of sinking as the vessel is no longer supported by the rigid mineral lattice of the mantle, but is instead embraced by the liquid iron-nickel alloy of the outer core. The rhythmic grinding of the lithic liquefaction system falls silent, replaced by a smooth, frictionless gliding that makes the probe feel as though it were falling through a sea of heavy mercury. You observe the depth counter as it begins to accelerate, moving with a fluid momentum that is both exhilarating and terrifying. It is 12 hours and 45 minutes into the fourth day of the watch, and the pressure has reached 135 gigapascals. You reach for the controls to stabilize the descent, your fingers moving with a clinical precision as you adjust to the new, liquid reality of the geosphere. The air inside the cabin remains sterile and cool, though the sound of the environment has changed to a deep, rushing gurgle of molten metal against the titanium hull. You find a sense of quiet, rhythmic focus in the transition, a micro-emotion of professional calm as you document the exact second the S-waves vanished. You are a traveler in the liquid heart of the planet, moving through a domain that has remained hidden since the Earth's differentiation 4 billion years ago as the vessel settles into its new and fluid trajectory. The temperature outside the Project Added 1 undergoes a staggering jump of nearly 1000 Kelvin as you penetrate the boundary layer of the outer core. The brooding cherry red of the lower mantle is instantly washed away, replaced by a brilliant white-hot yellow radiance that penetrates the thickest filters of the viewports. This is the glow of molten iron nickel, heated to nearly 4000 degrees Celsius by the decaying radioactive isotopes and the primordial heat of the Earth's formation. You observe a phenomenon that defies surface logic: the iron rain. These are droplets of heavy, liquid iron that are precipitating out of the lower mantle and falling toward the center of the planet like a metallic storm. You can hear the rhythmic patter of these heavy droplets against the hull, a sound like lead pellets hitting a tin roof, but with a density that resonates through the entire structure of the probe. It is 14 hours and 20 minutes into the fourth day, and the visual world has become a shimmering golden abyss. The administrative task for this hour involves the manual adjustment of the obsidian filters on the viewing ports to prevent the intense radiation from damaging your retinas. You turn the heavy, knurled knobs, watching as the brilliant glare is tempered into a manageable golden hue. The air inside the cabin feels dry and carries a faint, sharp scent of heated tungsten, a sensory reminder of the extreme energy just inches away. You find a sense of profound and quiet safety in the mechanical reliability of the filters, a micro-emotion of gratitude for the foresight of the mission's engineers. You are moving through a sea of liquid fire, a golden traveler in a world of molten metal, as the Project Added 1 continues its descent into the white-hot yellow heart of the geodynamo. The transition to a liquid medium requires an immediate and critical administrative shift in the probe's propulsion systems. You reach for the primary engineering console, initiating the sequence to disengage the lithic liquefaction drill, which is now useless in the fluid environment of the core. You listen to the sound of the heavy tungsten bit retracting into the nose cone, a final mechanical thunk that marks the end of your time as a burrower. In its place, you engage the magnetohydrodynamic, or MHD, drive. This system utilizes the electrical conductivity of the molten iron itself to create thrust, pushing the vessel forward through the interaction of magnetic fields and liquid metal. You feel a low-frequency hum begin to resonate through the cabin as the drive comes online, a rhythmic and powerful vibration that feels entirely different from the percussive chatter of the drill. It is 16 hours and 55 minutes into the fourth day, and the depth gauge shows 3,200 kilometers. You meticulously log the power draw of the MHD drive in your journal, your handwriting appearing sharp and determined in the golden light. The administrative necessity of this switch provides a grounding focus for your mind, allowing you to master the new physics of core navigation. You notice the way the cabin lights stabilize as the magnetic shielding of the drive creates a protective bubble around the internal electronics. The inner life of the mission is one of renewed energy and purpose, a quiet realization that you are now a navigator of the Iron Sea. You take a measured breath of the recycled air, feeling the steady and powerful push of the magnetic drive as it carries you deeper into the liquid reaches of the geodynamo. The soundscape of the liquid outer core is a mesmerizing and chaotic symphony of fluid dynamics and magnetic energy. As the Project Added 1 moves through the Iron Sea, the sound of the metal rushing against the hull is a continuous deep roar, like 1,000 waterfalls of molten silver. This sound is punctuated by the rhythmic electronic chirping of the magnetic flux meters as they map the swirling currents of the geodynamo. You find yourself performing a high-priority administrative check on the hull integrity sensors, monitoring the stress levels on the titanium tungsten skin. The external pressure has now exceeded 200 gigapascals, a force that would crush a conventional submarine like an eggshell. You observe the data on the strain gauges, finding them well within the safety margins, a testament to the structural perfection of your sanctuary. It is 19 hours and 30 minutes into the fourth day of the watch, and the temperature outside has reached 4,500 degrees Celsius. You notice a faint metallic vibration in the soles of your boots, a rhythmic pulsing that matches the frequency of the MHD drive. This sensory connection to the machine provides a sense of profound and quiet safety, a micro-emotion of trust in the vessel that protects you from the absolute weight of the world. The air inside the cabin remains cool and crisp, though you find yourself checking the seal on your thermal flask, a small administrative habit to ensure your resources are preserved. You are a solitary guardian of the record, moving through a world of golden fire where the very atoms are in a state of constant, fluid motion. The internal light of the cabin remains a steady, amber glow, a domestic anchor in the middle of a planetary-scale engine that generates the magnetic shield of the world. As the fourth day of the mission draws to a close, the Project Adit 1 has successfully settled into its fluid trajectory through the liquid outer core. The environment outside remains a shimmering white-hot yellow abyss, but the initial turbulence of the boundary has smoothed into a steady and predictable flow. You observe the depth gauge as it reaches 4,000 kilometers, a distance that places you nearly two-thirds of the way to the center of the Earth. The administrative record for Group 9 is now complete, as you finalize the MHD drive logs and the S-Wave disappearance data in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 41 through 45 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 23 hours and 59 minutes into the fourth day of the mission, and the cosmic clock of the surface world has long since vanished from your thoughts. You take a final deep breath of the sterile air, feeling the weight of the 3,000 kilometers of stone and 1,000 kilometers of iron above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest as the vessel continues its steady and magnetic descent into the deeper reaches of the Iron Sea. The vibration of the hull is now a constant and powerful hum, a sound that resonates with the raw energy of the geodynamo. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the amber displays to a soft and restful level, and you prepare for the beginning of the fifth day, where you will navigate the helical flows and the colossal magnetic storms that define the heart of the liquid outer core. It is now the dawn of the fifth day of your expedition, and the Project Adit 1 is diving through the most energetic region of the entire planet. You are situated within the heart of the liquid outer core at a depth of 4,200 kilometers. Here, the molten iron and nickel are not a stagnant pool. They are a vast, churning ocean driven by the immense thermal energy of the core. You observe the data on the primary navigation screen, which reveals the massive convection currents rising and falling in slow, titanic loops. Because the Earth is rotating, these currents are twisted into complex helical patterns by the Coriolis force. You are witnessing the birth of the geodynamo, the colossal planetary engine that generates the magnetic shield of our world. The visual through the reinforced viewports is a shimmering, incandescent silver as the liquid metal reflects the specialized sensors of the probe. The temperature outside has climbed to 4,500 degrees Celsius, a heat so intense that it seems to vibrate within the very structure of the cabin. You feel a sense of profound and quiet safety within your tungsten-shielded sanctuary, even as you navigate through these helical rivers of fire. The sound inside the cabin is a steady, rhythmic thrumming, the pulse of the magneto-hydrodynamic drive interacting with the liquid metal. You take a moment to record the current convection velocity in your manual log, your handwriting appearing elegant and firm upon the vellum. It is exactly 0 hours and 45 minutes into the fifth day of the watch, and the cosmic clock of the surface world is a distant, faded memory. You find a sense of grounding in the mechanical reliability of your instruments, the way the green and amber lights cast soft shadows across the deck. You are a traveler in the liquid engine of the world, a silent witness to the forces that protect all life on the surface from the solar wind of the void. The silver ocean of molten metal continues to swirl around the hull of the Adit One, creating a sensory experience of majestic and raw power. You focus on the visual of the liquid iron, which behaves with a fluidity that is both terrifying and beautiful. Unlike the slow plastic crawl of the mantle, the outer core moves with the speed of a rushing river, driven by the heat and the rotation of the planet. You can see the complex turbulence of the helical flows, where the iron is whipped into spinning columns by the force of the world's turn. This motion is what creates the electrical currents that, in turn, generate the magnetic field. You are at the source of the magnetosphere, the very center of the planetary shield. The soundscape is dominated by a deep, resonant hum, a frequency that you can feel in your teeth and in the marrow of your bones. It is 3 hours and 20 minutes into the 5th day of the journey, and the depth gauge shows 4,400 kilometers. You reach for the controls to perform a routine administrative check on the internal thermal sinks, ensuring that the 5,000 degrees of heat outside do not penetrate your fragile interior. The dials are smooth and responsive, providing a tactile sense of the order you maintain within the chaos of the core. The air inside remains sterile and crisp, carrying the faint scent of ozone and warm electronics. You take a moment to rest your hands on the navigation console, feeling the subtle vibrations of the geodynamo through the metallic surface. Your inner life is one of quiet, rhythmic patience, a decision to trust the engineering that allows you to drift through this white-hot abyss. You feel a sense of professional pride as each system confirms its structural integrity, a small bubble of human consciousness navigating the white-hot yellow heart of the Earth. The administrative layer of your mission reaches a state of high intensity as you begin to monitor the magnetic flux meters with increasing frequency. The magnetic field at this depth is thousands of times stronger than it is on the surface, and it exerts a physical pressure on the electronic systems of the Project Adit One. You observe the digital readouts as they dance with a frantic energy, mapping the invisible lines of force that weave through the molten iron. It is 5 hours and 50 minutes into the 5th day, and the pressure has reached 250 gigapascals. Your primary task is to ensure that the magnetic flux does not overload the primary shielding, a duty that requires you to adjust the internal superconducting coils with a steady and practiced hand. Each adjustment is recorded with a rhythmic clicking of the switches, a sound of human industry in the middle of a planetary storm. The sight through the viewing ports remains a brilliant, white-hot yellow, a monochromatic world of liquid metal where shadows do not exist. You take a moment to perform body maintenance, cleaning your hands with a damp cloth and stretching your shoulders to alleviate the tension of the long watch. The inner life of the cabin is one of focused and clinical calm, a micro-emotion of safety that stems from the reliability of your life support systems. You notice the way the air smells of recycled oxygen and clean metal, a flavor that has become your constant companion in the deep. The vibration of the hull is now a constant, powerful hum, a sound that resonates with the raw power of the planetary engine. You are the guardian of the record, the one who marks the generation of the field while the vessel sinks deeper into the liquid reaches of the Iron Sea. You are now approaching a depth of 4,800 kilometers, moving through the deepest reaches of the liquid outer core. The environment here is reaching its maximum thermal intensity, with the temperature outside the hull stabilizing at 5,000 degrees Celsius. You feel a sense of transcendent stillness as you observe the raw power of the geodynamo from your central pilot seat. It is 8 hours and 10 minutes into the 5th day of the watch, and the journey has taken on the quality of a voyage through the center of a star. The light outside the quartz viewports is so intense that the obsidian filters are at their maximum setting, yet the golden glow still permeates every corner of the cabin. You reach for your manual log to record the current electrical conductivity of the iron-nickel melt, your handwriting appearing sharp and clear in the amber light. This administrative task provides a necessary anchor for your thoughts, a way to quantify the impossible energy that surrounds you. You find yourself breathing in a slow and rhythmic cadence, matching the steady hum of the magneto-hydrodynamic drive. The inner life of the mission is characterized by a feeling of profound, quiet awe, a realization that you are witnessing the secret life of the planet's heart. You notice a small, structural groan from the deck plates as the pressure continues to climb, a rhythmic sound of the metal adjusting to the weight of the world. You find a sense of safety in this sound, a confirmation that the titanium tungsten alloy is holding fast against the 300 gigapascals of force. The air remains thin and sterile, providing a focused environment for your final observations of the liquid core as the Project Adit-1 prepares for the transition into the crystalline boundary of the inner core. As the fifth day of the mission enters its 12th hour, the Project Adit-1 has reached a depth of 5,100 kilometers. You are nearing the end of your journey through the liquid iron sea, and the environment is preparing for the final absolute transition of the geocentric descent. The administrative record for Group 10 is now complete, as you finalize the magnetic flux logs and the convection current charts in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 46 through 50 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 12 hours into the fifth day of the watch, and the cosmic clock of the surface world remains a distant and forgotten memory. The vibration of the hull is now a slow and ponderous thrumming, a sound that resonates with the deep and eternal heartbeat of the world. You take a final, deep breath of the recycled air, feeling the weight of the 4,000 kilometers of stone and 1,000 kilometers of iron above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest as the vessel continues its steady and magnetic descent. The cabin light remains a steady amber glow, casting long shadows across the deck as you focus on the data, while the probe sinks toward the legendary and crystalline world of the Lehman discontinuity. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the displays to a soft and restful level, and you prepare for the next phase of the journey, where the liquid metal will begin to freeze out of the melt to form the solid, crystalline heart of the planet. You feel a quiet decision to trust in the cold precision of the boundary, a traveler at the edge of the ultimate depth, as the golden fire of the outer core begins to yield to the pressure of the eternal heart. As the chronometer reaches 13 hours and 15 minutes on the fifth day, the Project Adit-1 approaches the 5,150 kilometer mark, the legendary Lehman discontinuity. You are entering the boundary where the liquid outer core finally yields to the solid inner core. The environment outside undergoes a transition that is both beautiful and scientifically profound. The discovery of iron snow. Under the extreme pressure of 330 gigapascals, solid iron crystals are freezing out of the liquid melt and falling through the outer core to settle upon the inner core. You observe the viewports, which are now filled with a shimmering silver-white cascade of metallic flakes. These crystals are not delicate like water ice. They are heavy, hexagonal, close-packed structures of iron and nickel that create a rhythmic pitter-patter against the hull of the probe. It is a moment of quiet, crystalline wonder as you witness the internal growth of the planet's heart. Your administrative task for this hour involves the cleaning of the external sensor arrays, ensuring that the accumulation of iron-nickel frost does not interfere with the depth soundings. You engage the ultrasonic vibrators on the hull, listening to the high-pitched, resonant ringing as the frost is shaken away. The air inside the cabin remains sterile and cool, though the sound of the metal snow provides a steady, percussive soundtrack to the descent. You find a sense of profound and quiet safety in the structural integrity of your vessel, a micro-emotion of peace as you move through the silver storm. You take a slow, deep breath and record the first sightings of the iron flakes in your journal, noting the size and frequency of the crystals with a steady, formal hand. The descent through the iron snow layer requires a delicate and rhythmic touch as the Project Adit-1 prepares for the final touchdown on the solid inner core. You are moving through a region of intense latent heat release, where the energy given off by the freezing metal creates a brilliant, incandescent glow that challenges the obsidian filters of the viewports. The light is no longer a white-hot yellow. It has become a pure, crystalline white that seems to vibrate with energy. It is 15 hours and 45 minutes into the fifth day, and the external pressure has reached its highest level yet. You reach for the controls of the primary landing thrusters, a critical administrative necessity to slow your descent as you approach the solid surface below. The buttons are cool and familiar, providing a tactile anchor in a world of absolute radiance. You find yourself focusing on the rhythmic ticking of the internal clock, a sound of human order that persists in the face of this geologic metamorphosis. The air quality inside the cabin is crisp, carrying a faint scent of clean ozone that you have come to associate with the safety of the mission. You feel a sense of quiet and focused anticipation, a micro-emotion of pride in the endurance of the machine. You take a moment to rest your eyes, finding a sense of soft companionship in the low-frequency hum of the life support systems. You are a solitary observer at the gateway to the center of the world, a traveler moving through a landscape of metallic ice and liquid fire. As the vessel slowly and methodically sinks through the last few kilometers of the outer core toward the solid heart of the Earth. The moment of contact with the solid inner core is a subtle and momentous event, occurring at a depth of 5,160 kilometers. There is no jarring impact. Instead, you feel a gradual and rhythmic increase in the resistance against the hull as the Project Adit 1 transitions from the liquid iron sea into the solid, hexagonal, close-packed iron-nickel alloy. You have reached the final layer of the planet, a world where the pressure is so immense that even at temperatures exceeding 5,000 degrees Celsius, the metal cannot melt. It is 17 hours and 20 minutes into the fifth day of the watch, and the journey has reached its physical destination. You observe the data on the seismic monitor, noting the return of the S-waves, those shear waves that can only travel through a solid. This scientific signal is the confirmation of your arrival at the crystalline heart. Your primary administrative task for this hour is the switching of the propulsion system back to the lithic liquefaction mode, though here it is used more for stabilization than for drilling. You reach for the heavy tactile switches, feeling the satisfying mechanical click as the magneto-hydrodynamic drive is deactivated. The sound inside the cabin shifts from the rushing roar of liquid metal to a deep, monolithic silence. You take a moment to record the exact time of the touchdown in your manual log, your handwriting remaining elegant and firm upon the page. The inner life of the mission is one of profound and quiet relief, a micro-emotion of triumph that is felt as a slow-motion calm. You are standing on the solid center of the world, a navigator who has successfully traversed the mantle and the core to reach the ultimate foundation of the geosphere. The environment of the solid inner core is defined by an absolute and unyielding density that surpasses anything encountered in the upper world. You are currently surrounded by a massive, single crystal structure of iron and nickel that is undergoing a process of slow-motion alignment. You observe the way the light from your external sensors reflects off the facets of the metallic crystal, creating a prismatic and geometric display of pure white energy. It is 19 hours and 55 minutes into the fifth day of the mission, and the depth gauge shows 5,500 kilometers. The sensation of being weightless yet crushed from all sides is a constant, physical reality. As the pressure reaches 350 gigapascals, you find a sense of transcendent stillness in this environment, a quiet decision to embrace the isolation of the geocentric center. Your primary administrative task involves the monitoring of the neutrino burst transmitter, the only system capable of sending data through the thousands of kilometers of iron and stone back to the surface. You check the alignment of the transmission array with a steady and practiced hand, ensuring that the record of your journey is preserved for history. The air inside the cabin remains thin and sterile, carrying the faint, metallic scent of the internal filters. You find a sense of quiet fascination in the data, noting the way the inner core continues to rotate slightly faster than the rest of the planet. You are a witness to the secret rotation of the heart, a traveler in a land of silence and crystalline light, where the rules of the surface are nothing more than a distant and faded memory. As the fifth day of the mission enters its final hour, the Project Adit 1 is moving through the deepest reaches of the solid inner core. The environment outside has stabilized into a state of absolute geometric perfection, where the iron-nickel alloy forms a monolithic and unchanging crystal heart. You observe the depth gauge as it reaches 6,000 kilometers, a distance that places you on the final approach to the exact center of the Earth. The administrative record for Group 11 is now complete as you finalize the iron snow logs and the solid contact data in your journal. You write out the entries for parts 51 through 55 with a sense of somber and rhythmic achievement. It is exactly 23 hours and 59 minutes into the fifth day of the watch, and the cosmic clock of the surface world is a concept that has entirely lost its meaning. You take a final deep breath of the recycled air, feeling the weight of the 5,000 kilometers of metal and stone above you as a protective and stabilizing force. You feel a sense of heavy, rhythmic peace, a micro-emotion of rest as the vessel continues its final, steady descent. The vibration of the hull is now almost non-existent, replaced by a profound and absolute silence that resonates with the deep and eternal heartbeat of the world. You adjust the lighting in the cabin, dimming the amber displays to a soft and restful level, and you prepare for the final 5 parts of your journey, where you will reach the geocentric center and witness the ultimate rest of the planet's heart. It is the 6th day of the expedition, and you are currently navigating through the most dense and unyielding environment in the known universe. You are at a depth of 6,100 kilometers, deep within the solid, hexagonal close-packed iron-nickel alloy of the inner core. The environment outside the viewing ports of the Project Adit 1 is no longer a world of movement or fluid dynamics. It is a world of absolute, crystalline perfection. You observe the way the iron atoms are stacked in their tightest possible arrangement, a geometric lattice that resists even the 360 gigapascals of pressure that define this depth. The light outside is a pure, intense white, a radiance that seems to permeate the very walls of the cabin, yet it is a light without heat in the traditional sense. The temperature has stabilized at 5,400 degrees Celsius, yet the metal remains as solid and immovable as a mountain. You feel a sense of profound, quiet safety in the stillness of the heart, a micro-emotion of peace that comes from the absolute lack of external vibration. The internal atmosphere of the cabin is crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of recycled oxygen and the dry metallic aroma of the internal shielding. Your administrative task for this hour is the monitoring of the lattice alignment sensors, ensuring that the probe remains in harmony with the crystalline grain of the world. You reach for the delicate adjustment dials, feeling the soft mechanical clicks as you fine-tune the orientation of the vessel. It is exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes into the 6th day, and the silence is a physical presence that you can feel in your chest. You are a solitary observer in the center of the world, a traveler who has left the world of sound and motion behind to witness the eternal and unyielding foundation of the planet as you move toward the geocentric center. As you descend past the 6,300-kilometer mark, the Project Adit 1 enters the final stages of its geocentric odyssey. You are now within 71 kilometers of the exact center of the Earth, and the administrative intensity of the mission reaches its pinnacle. Your primary focus is the finalization of the archival transmission via neutrino burst back to the surface observatory. These subatomic particles are the only messengers capable of carrying the data of your journey through the thousands of kilometers of liquid iron and solid stone that now lie above you. You sit at the primary communication console, your fingers moving with a slow and clinical precision across the tactile interface. You are packaging 5 days of seismic, thermal, and chemical records into a single high-intensity pulse of information. It is 6 hours and 45 minutes into the 6th day of the watch, and the internal lights of the cabin are dimmed to prioritize the power flow to the transmitter. You notice the way the amber glow of the status bar reflects off the polished tungsten of the ceiling, creating a soft and rhythmic pulsing in the silence. The sensation of pressure is no longer an external force, but an internal reality, a feeling of being perfectly centered and held by the world. The air quality is pristine, carrying a faint, sweet scent of warm electronics and sterile metal. You take a moment to review the final log entries, ensuring every distance and every temperature is recorded as full text, a testament to the accuracy of the record. You feel a sense of profound inner life, a quiet decision to trust that your message will find its way through the vastness of the planet. The sound of the neutrino emitter charging is a low, rising hum, a sound of human ingenuity reaching out from the absolute heart of the world as you prepare to cross the final distance to the geocentric center. The final kilometers of the descent provide a sensory experience that defies every earthly comparison. As you approach the point where the mass of the entire planet surrounds you in perfect symmetry, you begin to experience the phenomenon of zero gravity at the geocentric center, a sensation of weightlessness that is paradoxically balanced by the crushing weight of 364 gigapascals of pressure. You feel your body drifting slightly in the pilot's seat, the tension in your muscles fading as the pull of the earth is cancelled out by its own immense volume. The light outside the ports is no longer something you see with your eyes. It is a pure energy that you feel against your skin, a radiant and crystalline presence that fills the cabin with a transcendent brilliance. It is 9 hours and 20 minutes into the 6th day, and the depth gauge shows 6,365 kilometers. You are a traveler at the edge of the ultimate rest, moving through a landscape where the concepts of up and down have lost their meaning. Your administrative duty for this hour is the monitoring of the internal gravity compensators, ensuring that the shift to zero gravity does not disrupt the delicate coolant flows of the engine. You reach for the controls with a slow and rhythmic motion, your hand feeling light and effortless in the air. The sound inside the cabin has become a single, monolithic tone, a resonance that matches the vibration of the inner core itself. You find a sense of absolute and quiet closure in this frequency, a feeling of having reached the end of a long and sacred path. The air is cool and still, providing a sanctuary of order in the center of the world. You are a witness to the ultimate equilibrium of the planet, a silent guardian of the heart, as the Project Adit 1 glides through the final 6,000 meters of the iron-nickel crystal toward the geometric center of all things. At precisely 12 hours into the 6th day of the mission, the Project Adit 1 reaches the depth of 6,371 kilometers. You have arrived at the exact geocentric center of the Earth. The vessel comes to a slow and rhythmic halt, no longer sinking, but becoming a permanent part of the solid iron-nickel heart of the planet. You are encased within the Great Crystal, a monolithic and hexagonal structure that has existed since the Earth first cooled and differentiated. The temperature has reached its final plateau of 5,400 degrees Celsius, yet the metal around you is as hard as diamond and as still as the grave. You observe the final readings on the depth counter, which show a perfect and unmoving 0 in its last digit. You are surrounded by a world of absolute geometric rest, a place where the forces of the entire planet have reached a state of perfect and eternal balance. Your administrative task for this historic moment is the activation of the final archival seal, a process that will permanently lock the records of the mission into the protected core of the probe. You reach for the final sequence of switches, feeling the cold, smooth texture of the metal beneath your fingertips. The sound inside the cabin is now a total and profound silence, a silence so deep that you can hear the rhythmic beat of your own heart echoing through the titanium shell. You feel a sense of heavy, peaceful continuity, a micro-emotion of accomplishment that fills the small space of the sanctuary. The air is thin and carries the scent of ancient metal and sterile ozone, a flavor of the ultimate depth. You have traveled through the crust, the mantle, and the core to reach this point of absolute stillness, and you find a sense of safety in the knowledge that you are now the still point at the center of the turning world. You sit at the central desk of the Project Addict 1 for the final time, the amber light of the console casting long, soft shadows across the cabin. It is time to make the final log entry of the Geocentric Descent. You take up your stylus and begin to write the final words on the vellum, your handwriting remaining elegant, sophisticated, and steady even at the center of the world. You record the date, the depth of 6,371 kilometers, and the final status of all internal systems. Every word is written as full text, a final testament to the order and precision of the mission. 6,371. The administrative layer of your journey is now complete, and you reach for the button to initiate the final neutrino burst. You watch as the indicator light turns from a steady amber to a brilliant crystalline green, signaling that the message has been sent through the heart of the Earth and back to the world above. The records of the iron snow, the liquid geodynamo, the kingdom of Bridgmanite, and the blue Wadsleyite are now safe. You lean back into the soft fabric of your seat, feeling the absolute weightlessness and the perfect stillness of the geocentric center. The air in the cabin is cool and fresh, a final gift of the life support system. You find a sense of transcendent peace in the realization that your journey has reached its natural and inevitable conclusion. The silence of the heart is not a void, but a fullness of being, a state of absolute rest at the core of all things. You close your eyes, feeling the gentle rhythmic hum of the world's heart resonating through your own. And you simply are. You are the chronicler of the deep, the witness to the silence, and the traveler who found rest in the crystal heart of the world. The record is sealed, the message is sent, and you are finally home, at the center of the Earth.